you'd like to use that.
Okay. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the sixth session of the Howland Gardens visioning process. So we started this months ago. Many of you have been here for most, if not all of them, and we're very excited tonight because we're going to be exploring the final vision that we're going to present to the Jersey City Housing Authority Board of Commissioners. The other thing that I'm happy to share with you is that we're going to provide you with a preliminary timeline of what a revitalization process looks like. And also, we have tentatively scheduled the first of several meetings that will talk about legal rights and the process of relocation. We are hoping to do that on July 23rd, but that is just one of several meetings that we will hold. So tonight we're going to look at what we've come to in terms of a vision. We're going to provide a preliminary time frame, and we're going to tell you about what the relocation meetings are going to look like. So I'm going to now, as always, turn it over to Steve and Claudia of Kitchen and Associates. Okay, well, Steve, to walk us through, and you'll see me towards the end of the meeting when we start talking about timeline and next steps. So thank you for coming.
Good evening again. So, how many have been here for every one of the meetings? You don't count. Okay, you get to take home extra pretzels at the end. Okay, as Vivian just said, what we're going to do is we're going to go quickly through a review, because if everybody hasn't been here for all of them, you've all been here for some of them. I don't think I see anybody that I don't recognize from one of them. We're going to go quickly through how we got to this point, how we got to the decisions that we made, and then we're going to show you how these potential visions can work and really kind of go together. Okay. Now I'm going to do both things because Claudia's not here tonight. So I know you guys like her better than me anyway. So we are in meeting number 6. That's right, it's meeting number 6. The first one was in late January, where we just started, understanding what you guys thought about current conditions at Howland Gardens. And then meeting 2, we talked about programming, that vision process. There's meeting 2, there's kind of a picture. That's where we had those stations set up, and people were drawing things and they were writing things down. Meeting number 3 is when we started looking at, okay, what are the things that you wanted to see? What are the most important things that you wanted to see in terms of bigger units, better parking, some of the things that we've been talking about for the last few months. In April, we started talking about finances, challenges, and opportunities, because a great vision is only on paper if it can't become real, right? If you come up with something that just can't work from a financial standpoint or from a regulation standpoint, well, we've had fun for 6 months, but we don't really have anything to show for it. So we had to make sure we had that reality check in the middle of the process so that the decisions that we're making are real. Last time, we had Tanya here from the Jersey City Planning Department. She helped us understand a little bit about the vision that the city has for this whole area. We talked about some of the things that other developers are doing on properties around this area. Remember, she was talking about how the city would like to see an elementary school come into this part of Jersey City. So it's not just what we may want, we also need to make sure that we do that in the context of what the city is looking to have. So every month, we've been making some decisions. Every month, you've been saying what you want, and we've been looking at the options, and we've been kind of narrowing our choices. We started everything, as we promised, everything would be on the table. From fixing what's here, to doing something new that's similar to what's here, fixing what's here with rehabilitation, doing something similar to what's here now, but brand new, that would be low density, medium density, increase the total number of units, but kind of kept it smaller than some of what's happening around us. And then high density, which is going to add quite a few more units and more amenities. Very quickly, early in the process, we took off the table rehabilitation, and we took off the table low density. You remember why we took those off the table? Because they fundamentally did not give us some of the things that were most important on your list. In some cases, they didn't bring back all the units. In some cases, they didn't achieve handicap accessibility. Some cases, they didn't give bigger units than what we have now. None of those cases gave you any more parking. These are some of your top priorities for a future Holland Gardens. So we were looking at more units in order to get more amenities, more of what we want. Then that reality check. If you remember that in the process, we kind of paused the design and talked about finances, regulation, and reality. All of this stuff is in the record. It's on the Facebook page. It's in your notes from this. All of this is fully accessible to you. But when you looked at the financial reality, that's when another executive. That's when that middle, that medium density option kind of went away. Because what happens there is there's not enough money in conventional ways in order to really create that kind of halfway. A little bit more than what we got, but not as much as some of the other properties around here in Jersey City. Now, if you remember, those of you who were here for a while, early on, I was saying there are certain things that we're talking about here at Holland Gardens that I don't talk about, quite honestly, I don't talk about it with any other public housing resident group. Because there's really no other place where you can talk about it like you can here at Holland Gardens. Holland Gardens, because of its proximity to the tunnels, to New York, what's going on around you, this real estate can actually support something of a higher density where most public housing properties don't even have this as an option. So it's a really unique type of thing. So together, decisions were made to eliminate rehab, eliminate low density, eliminate medium density, and to start to focus on what would higher density look and feel like. Again, this is from last month when Tanya was here. Tanya was showing us how Holland Gardens is right here in the middle. It's this current low area, but you can see all the other things that are either recently done in the neighborhood, or they're already approved, or they're on the. That's what's coming. If there's something on there that's not yet built, it's coming because somebody's already invested in the property, and those two towers down a little closer to the tunnel, those are coming. So in that context, we then look at when you build like that, what kind of units do we really get? And this is all in last month's presentation of a lot of detail about how the units would lay out and what kind of space you would have. And the most critical pieces of that, if I'll remind you, we did a little bit of analysis of what you have now at Holland Gardens. What you have now in a 2-bedroom unit is 640 square feet. That's the yellow box. And then the next biggest box, the red one, that was how big a unit might be if it was a conventional affordable housing unit. That's funded by tax credits, one of the other tools that would often be used for something like this. And that's bigger, it's a lot bigger. But it's not as big as the blue box. The blue box is almost twice as big. And I'm not making that up. When you look at the other things that are being built of a high-rise nature, that's what you need to build in the marketplace here. And I'll repeat something else that I know we've talked about before. When somebody builds something new here at Holland Gardens, for everybody. Whether you're a public housing resident on an ACC budget, or whether you work in Manhattan and you're paying full $5,000–6,000 a month to live there, everybody, because a two-bedroom has to have the same size type of units. There's going to be a variety of them, but there can't be, there's these little tiny ones for the public housing residents, and that's big ones for everybody else. That's not, I won't allow that. So that's one of the reasons why this project is so unique. The three-bedroom unit, again, what you have now as a three-bedroom unit in Holland is about 740 square feet. A typical tax credit unit would be about 1,150, but in the marketplace, what you have over at Soho Lofts across the street for a three-bedroom unit is almost 1,600 square feet. That is it. That's bigger bedrooms, that's more storage, that's more bathrooms, that's full handicap accessibility. That's a place that everybody else lives in. That's how these decisions are putting us in a position where a future for Holland Gardens will get you the most of that long list of what you want. Last time we also talked a little bit about aesthetics. This was more of a fun exercise at the end. What could it kind of look like? We took a little scrub. Who was here last time? You guys in the back, there's one or two. Most of you didn't vote on this, but you know, it was either a very traditional, something like was already around, or something very, very modern. Last time in the room, there were a lot of traditionalists. So, there are a lot of people that are very traditional. And that's where we left off. In 10 minutes, I just brought everybody through 5 months of decision making, just reminded everybody where we've been. Anybody lost? Everybody's with me. Good. Anybody wet in the rain outside? Okay. So, what we're going to do tonight, we're going to do a couple things. We're going to look at these high-rise scenarios a little bit deeper so they can understand how these buildings work and how they can provide more of what you want. And tonight, we're not going to ask anybody to make a choice. You've already really done most of the choosing in this process. For sometimes a vision process results in a very, very pretty picture with a lot of detail. And that's appropriate if it's very exact. In a process like this one, where we're coming to a conclusion that we're going to multiply and do something bigger, and we've talked about getting developers involved. What we need to do is be very clear about what we want, how it might work, without boxing that process into an actual final design. That's something, and Vivian will talk about it later, where this process goes when they bring on a developer, and when they bring on the people that will make this a reality. That process has to remember the promises made and what you want, but it also has to be flexible enough for it to be sold and for to be financed and to attract all those other people who are going to pay all that other money that's going to help you get more of what you want. So we started with this. The one on the far left actually went away quickly because that's only what's allowed by right. And last time Tanya told us, you know, if we stay pretty close to the zoning regulations across the street, then we can do things like this scenario 2A and 2B that's up here. So that went away because remember, that's low rise. That's not going to get you a lot of the things that we've been talking about. So we need the city's support with the idea of breaking through what the current zoning has. Remember this one? This is a tool that we used that listed all those things, from all the things that the people wrote down, all the things that they wanted, whether they be laundries in the units, to the daycare on site, to senior centers, to computer rooms, all those things are on that list. And this is how quickly, all those red dots, that's how quickly for the rehabilitating the current property, that went off the table. A lot of red dots here, that's low rise. then again, this is a tool that we use together, and it's not surprising that the more high-rise, the more dense opportunity gives us more, in fact, all potentially of what we've been looking for. So what does that look like? Okay, 500. We don't know exactly how many units, but probably 500 or more. Now, what that does get you is one of the key things that you want: 192 public housing units back. It's going to get you replacement one-for-one for everything that's currently here at Holland Gardens. That was one of the very first promises that Vivian made. I believe that Mayor Fulop was here in the first meeting, and he reinforced that. And with 500 units or more coming in, it'll be easy to accommodate the 192 public housing, plus the additional. The parking, while we don't know exactly how many units, we're going to have probably one space for every 2 units, which is a lot more than what we have now. Dedicated right now, that we have maybe 4 units for every car. This would double the amount of parking, at least, in a scenario like this. Amenities. Where we're sitting right now, in this room, this is one of 2 common amenity spaces at Holland Gardens. This is, what, Steve, I'm gonna guess, 600 square feet at the most? 1,200. Maybe between both of them. This isn't 1,200 right here, I don't think. But in any case, 1,000, 1,200, 1,500 square feet is what you have now. 20 to 30,000 square feet of amenity space is what will be required in a building like this. And that's going to be common spaces. It's going to be smaller spaces. It's going to be lounges. There will be fitness centers. It'll be all sorts of different types of spaces in order for a building like that to function. Potentially commercial. Right now, we have 0 commercial here at Holland Gardens. When I say commercial, I mean on-site services or small retailers or even things like dry cleaners, services like that. A mixed-use building can have maybe up to 10,000 square feet of that. So these are all different components that can go together to make buildings like this work. So the existing site, well, today it looks a little better than it does there. But you can see everything is very, very low compared to already what's going on around at Holland. So scenario 1A, that basically takes the approach of you take the whole block, you take the whole block of Holland Gardens and you say, we're going to do one big building on the whole block. Now, walking it, it doesn't feel like it's all that big, but it's actually quite sizable. You can get an awful lot on this block. So what happens there in a scenario like this is you build up your building kind of like you build the layers of a cake up. You start at the bottom with things that need to be down low, and then you keep going, and ultimately there's a high-rise that sits on top. So at the base, what you can have, and just to orient you for this, for the moment, think this is Jersey Avenue. That's where most of the traffic comes right now. And you got 16th Street and Erie back in here. So I'm going to step away so that you can really kind of see what happens, kind of like the ground floor or something like this. What you really want to do is put kind of commercial space, non-residential space, where the cars are, where the traffic is. So on the ground floor along Jersey, that's that red area that would be more of a commercial, non-residential space. You can have a residential lobby where people who live here come and go out of a lobby that's pedestrian. But then off of that, you know, the side alley that you have to park, that becomes a place where the cars come and they enter into at least the lower part of a parking garage. So on the ground floor, you'll have kind of commercial uses where they make sense. Cars coming and going where they make sense. On Erie, it's possible that you can even do some townhouses, like right away, and some of the high rises as well in the neighborhood. They do have some areas, if you've walked around, you can see where they've got a few townhouses down at the base of them. so that they're accessed from inside the building, but also they've got their own porch. So when you go up from there, you keep building maybe 3 stories up, so you have a garage in the middle, that purple in the middle, that's a garage. Now, the key to doing garages in these kinds of buildings is you wrap them with other things so that you don't really see them. Anybody ever see a parking garage that they really like?
No.
No? Anybody ever see a parking garage that you look at and it's just ugly? Yeah, quite a few. Most parking garages are fairly ugly. When you do a building like this, typically you put the cars in the middle, in the garage, and then you wrap around that with other things. On the ground floor, you're going to do commercial things, more public things. As you go up, these would be maybe some townhouses, 2, 3-story townhouses and apartments that are at that level. So that creates a big base to our cake. Then you have a smaller building that sits on top of that. In this case, it's an L-shaped building. It's just being shown as an L shape. And what you do on the roof of that garage, that's where you have playgrounds and you have plants, and you can take that entire roof area and you can make that an elevated park. Now, you can still take advantage of the parks in the neighborhood, but this becomes a private park for the people who live in the building. So the only way to get to this park is if you have a key, you go up the elevator to that first floor. And on that floor, you see that it's not all residential. Some of that amenity space in those brownish boxes there. You come up the elevators, and then around this green space, you have some of those, you have spaces like this one where you can meet. And maybe that meeting room has large doors, and it can go indoors and outdoors. Maybe there's a fitness center, and you can go indoors and outdoors. So that becomes the way that you get back a lot of the things that you've got nice playgrounds out here, you've got places to gather. But you also have all sorts of folks coming and going through. This becomes more private for just the people that live in this building. Going up from there, you simply go up as high as you need to go with as many apartments as you need to get in order to balance and get the number of units, 192 public housing units, plus however many others are necessary in order to make the finances of this work. So that's a scenario A. And that's probably the simplest way to approach the site. Basically, one big block, do one big base of a building, and then put something taller and more slender on top of that base. I'm going to throw this over here for a minute. And I'm going to quickly go through for a moment.
How many stories is that?
That is 22 stories. So it's approximately what the cast iron lofts and the Soho lofts are like. So this is about the same size as some of the other things going on in the neighborhood. So
See, there's a question.
there's a question in the back,
How
sorry.
many apartments on each floor? You'll know?
That,
Estimate?
right now, this is a very conceptual, these are conceptual studies. What we know is if you go up 22 floors with that amount of square footage, and this is by doing math, you can get somewhere around 500 units. How many units on each floor? Well, if you got 500 units and you have 4 to 18, we can all whip out. I can't do that in my head. I need a calculator to do it, but that would tell you roughly how many units per floor.
Yes.
And it's possible in a scenario like this. And this is why we need to be a little flexible. If somebody takes this scenario, what they may do is they may say, you know what? It would be better for this to be a little taller and this to maybe step down. Maybe they'll do that. You've seen buildings that step down. Why do they do that? Sometimes they create outdoor terraces on upper floors, or maybe it's nicer for views. Maybe they want to angle the building a little bit. Not every building has to be right along the streets. There's a building that was just built down by the pier. Anybody ever see the Ellipse building? It's literally in plan, it's an ellipse. everything is, there's not a straight line in the building. A little more expensive than anything else you could draw, but it's down there. Other questions on this? Because I want to go through 2A and 2B, and then make sure that people understand the map. The primary thing today is understanding how these buildings work and the magnitude of how they sit on the site, if you will. So the difference between 2A and 2B, really, is 2A looked at the whole site as one big block. We have one big base and one big tower on top. 2B is a little bit different. It has some of the same things. It has to be about the same number of units, 500 plus units. Be the same number of parking, same kind of amenities. But that doesn't look the same. And that's one of the things that I want to try and get across tonight is that a building of this density can manifest in a lot of different ways. This is simply another approach at the same kind of density target. And what this does is it takes the block and actually divides it into two blocks. It reintroduces 15th Street. Because you can see on this map here, 15th Street comes in and stops right at the edge of Holland Gardens. And then over Jersey Avenue, it starts again. So this street comes in and stops, and then it starts again right next to Soho Lofts. So one of the things that would make a certain amount of sense in planning would be, well, what happens if 15th Street is reintroduced? Well, why would we do that? We do that for a number of reasons. Number one, it gives us more perimeter at the street, more ability to do things at the street level, either commercial things or support uses that are at the street level, so that there could be more robust amenities here. Number two, remember the conversation about a daycare? Maybe by breaking it into a larger block and a smaller block, you have two different kind of character buildings. One is a little bit taller, one is a little bit lower. This also lets you potentially phase your construction. We talked about phasing a couple of times. We talked about it in financial terms, because sometimes you need to be able to just build a piece of it, get that going, and then build the next piece of it. So these are all potential ways of keeping things flexible for the future. So what that does as a project, it's not all high rise. We're saying that maybe some of it makes more sense to be a little bit lower in a mid rise. And part of it is more of a high rise. That's actually much more similar to, and we'll come back to that, to the way, if you look at the aerial photographs of Soho Lofts and Cast Iron Lofts and those buildings over there, they're not all exactly the same. They've got some parts that are higher, some parts that are lower, in order to respond to some of these things, because they're not all built at the same time. They're phased in over time. So how does a building like, how does an approach like this work? We're going to look at the building blocks again. From the ground, now you can see on Jersey Avenue you still have some of those red uses, those commercial uses. But now it also kind of makes sense with the pedestrian pathways and maybe some relief of the parking and the vehicular circulation to do some of that along Erie Street. And what's really kind of neat is that it creates this new street right down the middle. Remember how we were talking about trying to come up with solutions that made the neighborhood feel better connected, so that we don't feel quite so isolated. This is one move that could make a new vision for Holland Gardens feel a bit more connected to the fabric of Jersey City. At one point, 15th Street went through. Before Holland Gardens was here, if you look at the old map, 15th Street went right through. That was way back in the 20s, 30s. It did go through. So reintroducing that, again, reinforces some of the more historical street patterns. So what would happen you have two buildings. Some people maybe live in one, in the low rise, some people may live in the high rise. What would probably not happen is that all the public housing would be in one building and none of the public housing would be in the other. That's one of the things we would be looking at this as a whole project, not two separate projects. Again, what I should point out is off of 16th now, we would come in and get into the parking. Again, there's a garage. Again, the garage is wrapping around it so you don't really see it. This time, we're bringing cars down off of 16th Street to get in. And because it's not as big, it doesn't take up as much land area, it's probably going to be a little bit taller in order to get that number of cars in. Again, as you go up, you can see the garage is being very well defined in the middle of the high rise, and it's again being wrapped around by apartments on the lower levels. Again, you get to a point where you don't need more garage. That's the roof of the garage. And that could be on the 4th floor, it could be on the 5th floor, it could be a 6th floor, it can be as high as or as low as it needs to be. These things are kind of flexible that way. So you can see that wherever that green space opportunity is, you're still going to be an elevated kind of park area. And at that area, you see the red kind of brown box that says indoor amenity space here. This is where people come. This is where people can basically have their meetings like this. They can get study lounges for kids and after school programs. They can be indoor, outdoor kind of uses. Oh, I don't want to calm down. Did now I gotta go there. So once you get up, again, the way these buildings work is the things that are down low are the things that need to be down low to work. One of the good things about that, what we heard from you guys, is down low is where the exhaust fumes kind of are. Down low doesn't get as good breezes. Down low doesn't get the kind of views that other people get. So it's not a bad thing to have common space a bit higher and to have more units up higher where you're out of the smelly car exhaust and where you can get better light and air and have healthier living environments. So again, here, different sizes, 6 stories is simply proposed here. Again, this is shown this way mainly because we've done math to get to around 500 units. So the purpose of showing 2 of these is to make sure that you understand that when a vision is for a higher density, mixed-use building, as a high-rise building, there are a lot of ways to make that happen. You can go from a single building, you can do 2 buildings. It's possible that you can do something even with 3 buildings on the site. I doubt you would be able to do more than that. And the reason is because that parking garage in the middle, that takes up quite a bit of land. And that needs to be a certain size. So when we talk about a vision, a lot of these planning efforts that we do, they'll come out with a very, very specific image. Again, what we want to do is be able to show images, show potentials for this site that are going to interest developers to come in and create the New Holland Gardens the way you guys want it. The way it has the senior centers, and it has the daycare centers, and it has the larger units, and it has all those amenities and all those positive things that you've been asking for. So the vision for Holland Gardens, what that will be presented to the Board of Commissioners of the Housing Authority, isn't a specific image. What it is really an approach. It's residents telling the commissioners, we have a unique site here. We can do something nobody else in the country can do here, and we want to try. That's really what the vision for Holland Gardens has come to. And you can see here, this is that up and down. This is Soho Lofts. It's got some parts that are big, some parts that are medium, some parts that are small. It's not just all one thing. And in part that's because every family is a little bit different. People who live in 3-bedroom units, they don't all live exactly the same. Maybe some want something up higher, maybe some want in a lower building, some may want a townhouse. An approach like this not only gets bigger units, but it also gets variety. I see a lot of nodding heads. Did I lose anybody along the way? I haven't lost anybody along the way. I think I lost Steve about 10 minutes ago. Okay. Questions? Comments? What do you think? Is this I'm hopeful that this is not surprising to anybody, but if it's surprising to you, say so. What was that?
I like the L shape.
You like the L-shaped one better than where the all?
I think it's more on the outside. You see what I'm saying?
More oomph on the outside.
I like it. It's more stuff you can do on the outside than that one you got. Yeah, like you feel like it goes back and you get more.
Okay, so good. Something like this feels a little bit more enclosed in, and the other one, that terrace area felt much more open. Very good. Any other thoughts or comments?
To that same
Go, Steve.
comment. So in effect, you could almost combine both A and B by making one big L building and then have the lower building in front, right?
You could. Again, the whole point of this is to say there's still a lot of potentials out there. And when you see these things, the things that I'm going to challenge you to remember because the process is going to go on. But you got to, and I say it multiple times, so that if you go back and you ever view these videos, the fundamental things that you're looking for, fresh air, and light, and outdoor parks, those you can use this process to come back to those checklists and test any proposal, any developer, wherever it goes next, you can test against these things to make sure that we're staying along the lines of what we've been discussing. Another question?
Just curious, just looking at A and looking at B, is there a difference in the elevator design between A and B? Because I see B with like the U shape, I mean, where would the elevators be? I know this is just a concept, but versus where are the elevators in A?
Okay. In A is actually the simpler of the two. Because in A, the elevators are right in the corner.
Okay.
That's really where they would be.
One chase.
There'd be multiple elevators because nobody likes standing around waiting for an elevator. But multiple elevators, but generally in a high-rise building, what you want to do is try to position the elevators in the middle of the core as best you can, so that nobody has to walk a whole lot further than somebody else does. Because once you get up there, if it's relatively equal to the ends. Now, there's some advantages to being on the end. I lived in an elevator building all the way on the end. I loved it because there was never any noise or anything like that. But not everybody likes to walk as far as I do. So in A, the elevator is probably in the middle. In B, there could be multiple elevators. Well, certainly there'll be different elevators in the two buildings because there are two different buildings. But there'd probably be an elevator, certainly in this high part, and there'd be another elevator in this high part. Because if you only had it there, whoever lived up here wouldn't be able to get to their floor without climbing stairs, and that's not good. So, those are all things that again, will have to be worked out in a final design with the development team.
One more question, corollary to that.
Okay.
So, with scenario A, it looks like if I wanted to put a service elevator in addition to the other elevators, I can do that, like people moving in and out, so they
Sure.
can move their stuff.
Very often there are multiple elevators, one size for a little bit larger. I mean, they can all do like emergency for gurneys and things like that, but sometimes you get those really big ones that make moving in that three-piece sectional couch or that queen box spring. or king box spring maybe. I mean, we just doubled the size of the units. Go for it. Have a king box spring. But you need to have a way to get it up there, right? So, in every high-rise like this, you do have the standard passenger elevators, and they usually are the fastest ones. There's usually one, maybe two that are a little bit slower, a little bit larger, so that they can help with moving things in and out. Other questions that folks might have? There's a question in the back. Troublemakers always sit in the back. I noticed that. I never get trouble from the folks down front. I know.
I got called the same thing. The elevators, what about the steps, the exits?
Okay.
You need that.
That's actually a great. Thank you. That's actually a great question to talk about, because some people worry that, and I'm going to use that to talk about safety as well. Because some people worry that, oh, in an elevator building, I'm not as safe as I would be in something like this. Here, you're only, even on the top floor, you're 2-3 flights up the stairs and you're out the door. When you do an elevator building, when you do a high rise, the building codes, what they do is they make you do more things, not to protect the building so much, just to protect the people. The life safety aspects, there always has to be multiple ways to get everybody out of the building. And those codes have continuously gotten stronger and safer, especially after something like a 9/11. After 9/11, everybody starts thinking about, okay, how do we make sure that in the event of a fire, that stair tower, fire's going to stay outside that stair tower because people need to use it and get down safely. So everything from sprinkler systems to the type of construction, you know, nothing that we're talking about here is a wood construction. None of it, so there's nothing to burn from that standpoint. It's all concrete, steel. Oh, there it is. It's coming back. It's all concrete and steel. You have multiple exit stairs. There'll be generators, emergency generators, to make sure that those elevators still work when the power goes out. Sprinkler systems in order to fight fire effectively. Standpipes so that a fire department official, when they go into the building, if they need to hook up a hose on the 14th floor, there's a place to do that. Here, you've got fire hydrants. A standpipe is nothing more than a fire hydrant that's up high. So there's a lot of things like that. There'll be multiple stairs like that. Yes, Steve?
Well,
No, I don't believe you. You said one last question. I do not believe you at all.
So this is the way the parking is designed, right? Parking in the middle, and then we have stuff surrounding it. Can you do that with passive ventilation, or it's got to be mechanical?
Can you do it with?
Passive ventilation, or does it have to be mechanical?
Okay. So he's asking a very technical question, and I'm going to make sure that you all understand it. You know those ugly parking garages I talked about before? You know, you see the ramps and things like that, and big openings. You don't have to actually exhaust any of that because there's no windows. Even though you got cars driving around there, the breeze blows, the air goes through, and it ventilates naturally. When you do something like this, that's not my phone. Thankfully, that's not my phone. When you do something like this and you wrap around the garage and the breeze blows, what happens? Absolutely nothing. All the exhaust fumes from the cars, they stay in there. So then you need a mechanical ventilation system. So just like I'm sure you've seen them, whether they're fans or sucking out their exhaust, and that's all managed to make sure that fresh air comes into the garage and all those fumes get exhausted out. And that, again, that's not just because I think it's a good idea or I don't like the smell of car. The building codes require that. If you don't have a certain amount of all that opening, you will be required to mechanically ventilate your garage. And this one will. And the garage will also be sprinkled. Some of those open air garages don't have the sprinklers. But because we're building things on top, we got to make sure if there's something going on with a car, that fire goes out like very quickly, because you don't want it compromising the units of the fire. So from a safety standpoint, there's really nothing to be concerned about in terms of, because these high-rise buildings, the codes are such that the level of safety concern is elevated, so that these are some of the most heavily controlled type of buildings that you can get. Even now, one of the newer things, you have to make sure that there's an emergency communication system, so that a fire commander on the ground, their walkie-talkie will be able to work and talk to their guy who's on the roof or on the 24th floor. That's something that in many of the older high-rises, that doesn't happen. Very often when you get above 6 floors, the people up there and the people on the ground, they can't talk to each other, so they can't respond to emergencies appropriately enough. So many of those buildings will be re-outfitted with emergency call systems like that. What other questions from anybody not named Steve? Oh, there is one. And no, Steve, you're not allowed to whisper to Sandy and have her ask your questions.
I would like to know if the parking is still going to be the same format here, like 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, how many bedrooms are they going to have?
So, first of all, there are going to be a lot more units, but of the 192, there will also be 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms, and we have a couple of 4 bedrooms. Typically, in rental apartments, you don't see that many, but that would be one of the criteria that the housing authority would put on the developer, is to at least return the same number and same mix of units that exist here in Holland Gardens. Okay?
I'm new here and I just moved in.
Well, welcome to Holland Gardens.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And my concern is that once all of this starts, because it is going to start.
It is going to start at some point.
What happens to the people that are here?
Okay. So the question is, looks good, looks interesting, I hear a lot of good things, but once it starts, what happens to all the people here? That's actually a wonderful segue, because what we've done here, this is the design visioning. This is setting the goal. But getting from having a goal to making it reality, there's time involved. And frankly, there's a lot of time involved. So I want to stress, nothing's going to happen to Holland Gardens today or tomorrow. Okay? Because a lot of this stuff does take time to put in place. And Vivian and Steve are going to talk about it. So you don't have to worry about moving out next week. Okay? So that is not a problem at all. You get to be here for a little bit. But the housing authority is going to talk about next steps and timeline in just a minute, unless people have more questions about the designs. What's that? The estimate of time is coming up. And I see Vivian coming up.
I know, because I hear the questions.
Okay. So while Vivian's coming up, this last slide here on design basically shows you side by side these 2A and 2B scenario A and B, and how they may look different, but they're still same number of units, about the same height, the same kind of parking, similar amenities and things like that. And the purpose is to show that you can get the things that you want to get, but they can look a little bit different. So now Vivian, I'm going to turn it back over to you, because but before I do, I want to thank you guys. I told you earlier, I think I told you the first one. I've been doing these kinds of meetings for over 30 years, and it's very, very rare to get the kind of dedicated participation over 6 meetings like this that you folks here at Holland Gardens have did. So, and I know that it's not just the meetings that I'm at, because I hear about the conversations that are happening in between the meetings, and people are looking at these videos. You guys are really engaged, and I want to thank you for participating. I really enjoyed it. It's been a lot of fun. I hope it's been a little bit of fun for you guys. I know you like the process. But while my part of this process may be coming to an end, your part is not. So please, 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 don't get tired and check out. Because if you get tired and check out, people will forget stuff. It won't be because of that they tend to, but remember, this is your vision. It's your job to fight for it, the champion. Like that. So thank you, and with that, I'll give it over to
As you can see from Steve and Claudia, who's not here tonight, they put a lot of time and effort to get the perspective, your thoughts in the room, and then come with these wonderful presentations and really keep a historical record of everything we've talked about. So I just want to say thank you, Steve, and thank you, Claudia. And now we're going to, we didn't want to leave this session without giving you a sort of framework. I'm right in front of this, so I'm
Right.
in the wrong side.
If you stand over here, you're
Yes,
probably
that's
better.
it. To give you, how about, to give you a sense of what happens in redevelopment. You're concerned, well, what does this mean? Well, the first thing that we need to do is take everything we've talked about here and go to our Board of Commissioners. That will happen this summer. First thing is we bring all of this and say, this is what we learned. This is the vision. The next thing that we do, and this will happen between the summer and the fall, is we do something called a request for qualifications. We do not have a developer at all. There is nobody waiting in the wings. We are a public agency, and whenever we put out something to bid, we have to put together, we can either go straight to a request for proposals or a request for qualifications. What that means is that it creates a list of organizations that are qualified to even put in a proposal to us about revitalizing this space. As you can see, this is complex, right? You need architects and engineers. You need people with financial expertise. So what we look for is groups to come in and we tell them this is the general idea of what's happening. Do you have even the qualification? You're not even submitting proposals, but do you have the experience and the capacity to even do something like that? That will happen in by fall of 2019, the next few months. Then we go out with the request for proposal. So what are we going to be doing? We're going to be looking at all of this and developing a request for proposal, which is a public document, which everybody can see, which is posted not only on our website, but shared publicly. And one of the key elements of that RFP is that whoever is seeking to do this work, they will know that we are seeking to have a minimum of 192 public housing units returned to the site. Someone asked, well, what does it mean in terms of unit size? We look at the unit sizes here. So we don't have 192 one-bedrooms. We have a mix of 1 to 4 bedrooms. And we also look at the families and their needs, right? Overhousing, underhousing. So those 192 units, right now, actually, I think we're at 189. I think 2 of those units are used for community spaces. So that is what we mean by one-to-one match. So it's not like we're going to say, oh, 192 public housing units, but now we're only going to return 1 bedroom. No, we're returning 192 units with the mix that we need and that we have. So that goes into the proposal, but we have many other things that go into the proposal. We've talked about, our desire for more community amenities. We have certain expectations in terms of environmental. So it is a document that really gives all of those companies, organizations that have applied and said, we have qualifications, guidelines, and it will tell them what were the things that we want to see. We have decided that we want a certain amount of community space, that we want 192 units minimum, that we want a higher density building. So all of those ingredients go into the request for proposals. Then we have a review of those proposals and we interview and then we select them. And that will happen in spring or summer of 2020. So just getting that process together takes some time. After that, we're in the phase of pre-development. We've selected someone and now we're really planning, right?
Yeah.
Then it is not until the fall of 2021 into winter of 2022 that we begin relocation process. So I just want to assure you, now you can read that in a couple ways. That is 2 years from now.
Yeah.
We will be having many, many conversations, and we want to start the conversation next month, July 23rd. We will be posting flyers, but the thing that I want you to understand is that it's not just one relocation meeting. What we want to do is give you the basic legal framework for relocation. You have rights, and we have responsibilities when it comes to relocating families. So we will cover sort of the basics, but everybody's family is unique, and you will have a unique set of questions. I've had a number of people ask me a range of questions. I'm a senior. My doctors are down here. What neighborhood? What am I going to do? Do I move? Do I get a voucher? All of those types of questions. On July 23rd, we're going to be inviting all of you, and also we welcome community groups and advocates who want to come to understand the legal framework of relocation, right? Relocation is not something that doesn't have rules. There are very strict rules about that. So we'll give that overview. But what we also want to do, just like when we have an annual plan, is take your questions, then come back at a later date and address all of the questions. And we have time over the next 2 years to answer every single type of question you might have. This should not be a situation, given what we've done. I mean, we've spent 6 months talking about what the vision might be. We're not all of a sudden going to stop talking, right? We want to continuously meet with you. I would like for us to be meeting quarterly to talk about what's the progress that we've made. Where are we with the RFQ, what we call a request for qualifications? Where are we with the RFP? What's the selection? Do you have questions about relocation? So I don't want anyone to think that after these 6 meetings that all of a sudden we're going to go away and it's going to be fall of 2020 and we're saying, well, it's time to move. That is not going to happen. But I think it's very important that you understand a general timeline. It is very possible that we might get delayed for some sort of reason. Then we would come back and tell you that. But it's not going to be shorter than this, right? We're not going to come to you and say, you know, we thought it was going to take 2 years, but now we're going to take it's only 6 months. That is not going to happen. How do you know it's not going to happen? 1, because we're saying it here publicly, and 2, a lot of things need to happen before we can even talk about, before anyone gets relocated. And I want us to use that time well. So I really would like for you, we'll have some handouts with these timelines that you can take. I would like for you to come back on July 23rd. We will talk about what relocation, the rights and responsibilities are. We will take your questions. We will live stream it the way we have live streamed everything. And here's the other thing. We're not taking the website down, and we're not taking down the documents. So everything that we've done since January will live on our website. So if you have questions, if you said, I thought I heard Steve say this, or Vivian say this, or Claudia say this, you don't have to guess. You can go back and watch the video. All of these presentations are available online for you to look at. And we will do the same thing around relocation. The last thing I want to say about relocation is that there are general guidelines to relocation. But as I said, every family situation is different, and you will have some deeply personal questions that you might want to ask us. There will be one-on-one sessions with every single family. So the idea behind these group meetings is to get the general information out, But the relocation decision for each family, we will have a relocation coordinator who will meet with each family, because there will be a family plan for everybody's relocation will look a little bit different. Your rights remain the same, our responsibilities remain the same, but everybody has a different family structure, different concerns, different needs, and that is dealt with individually. So I also don't want people to feel like we're going to talk about relocation, I have to talk about things personally in this big room. The purpose of these meetings is to give you legal information, give you an idea of the rules. We will bring the HUD documents in so you understand where do these rules come from, right? There's also the Uniform Relocation Act, right, which requires that at minimum 120 days before we announce your relocation and the move. So we will go through all of that. And as I said, this will unfold over the next 2 years. At our quarterly meetings, which I'd like for us to hold here, we will be giving you updates. You are always welcome to come to the board meetings, right? And you can speak to the Board of Commissioners, and we will be updating the Board of Commissioners at that time period. So I just want to give you, I know it's a big, big decision, but I want you to feel assured, despite what other people who may not know, about what happens when you're thinking about revitalizing a site, please don't rely on information from people who do not have the responsibility of delivering on revitalization. You're always welcome to, you can submit even on our website where we have this, you can submit questions, you can call with questions, you can come to meetings with questions. The only thing I ask of you is that if you have a question, please ask us and don't rely, because this is a complicated area. Not everybody, even when they're well-intentioned, has the correct information about how this process has to work. We have a legal obligation to do it a particular way, and we have obligations to you as residents to inform you and to make sure that we are protecting your rights. And I would hope, I'm always welcome to talk to other groups, but please come to us and we'd like to address questions straight away. So up here we have again the request that you stay informed and you stay involved. So we're going to begin what we're calling a series of Uniform Relocation Act information sessions. That's the legal underpinning. Those are the that's what tells us how we're supposed to do this. We don't get to decide. We have to follow that act. And we will continue to hold meetings quarterly with you. And then if you want to stay informed, as I said, we have it on the website. We will continue to post about when the meetings are going to happen well in advance. I really encourage you to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we're on Instagram. It's kind of hard to get away from us. We're everywhere. So, and we want to do that way for a reason, right? There's no special way you've got to talk to us. You can figure out whichever way you want to follow up on us, please use it. And do we have any others? Any other slides? If that's it. Thank you. And I mean that.